The Heim Group is a research-based organization founded by Dr. Pat Heim that specializes in the differences between male and female culture specific to the workplace. Heim Group President Tammy Hughes will take you on a journey into the research with the use of real-life stories that explain the differences.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us here today in the studios. My name is Tammy Hughes, and I'm with Dr. Pat Heim, and we're going to be talking in this video about leadership, being a team player, and the different rules of TUC. We know from working with organizations and executives all around the globe that one of the biggest ahas we hear from executives is that the different rules of TUC really does play out inside of organizations. So Pat, I thought I'd ask you just right off the bat to tell us a little bit about how some of those differences in the rules of TUC play out inside of organizations.
Well, men tend to live in a hierarchy and women tend to live in a flat culture, and men tend to have a goal focus in how they talk and women tend to have a process focus in how they talk. And that tends to affect who we hire and who we promote, because we tend to value people who are like us. If you want to understand some of the basic differences between men and women, the hierarchy versus the flat culture, the goal focus versus the process focus, you might want to visit our Power Dead Even video. It will be eye-opening in terms of the cultural differences between men and women.
Now explore with me leadership, because even leadership falls dramatically different when they study men and women. Here's what they have found. Neither style that men and women tend to use for leadership are right or wrong, good or bad. They're just different ways of leading. The problem is we tend to go on autopilot and we tend to lead with the style that we're most comfortable with rather than leading with the style that's most effective. So the trick is figuring out which leadership style is most effective in this situation. In the male culture, the leadership style that men tend to use is a style called command and control. Command and control works really well in a hierarchy. The person up here tells the person down here what to do, and the person down here does so unquestioningly. In a flat structure, the leadership style that's most often used is a style called involvement. And involvement works very well in a flat structure. It gets everybody involved in setting the direction for the group. So the trick here is using the style that's most effective and most appropriate rather than the one that I'm just most comfortable with. So let's talk about when each leadership style is most appropriate. Command and control is most appropriate in time-bound situations, emergencies, and when there are no alternatives. Involvement is most appropriate when you need creativity, psychological buy-in, and you need them to make it work. The trick here is using the style that's most appropriate, not just the style I'm most comfortable with, or the style I was born with, or the tool I use most often. Picking the one that's most appropriate. Someone asked us one time, are you suggesting that a football coach should use involvement? No. That's a classic time-bound situation. There's not time enough to get all the players over to the sidelines and say, what play do you think we ought to run next? Let's start with you and go around the huddle. That is a classic time-bound situation. Command and control is the most appropriate style to use in that situation. But the trick is using the style that's most appropriate rather than the style that I'm just more comfortable with. Now, the Center for Creative Leadership, which does fabulous research in the area of leadership, has found that one of the most important components for effective leadership is one must display some form of aggressiveness. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Research shows us that the bands of acceptable behavior are very broad for women in childhood.